I think a lot of the companies in the audience possibly have not exported to the Philippines yet, or maybe the market is new. So I would like to give a bit of an introduction to the Philippines. Of course, an archipelagic nation in Southeast Asia, in tropical climate, composed of 7,000 plus islands. Nobody really has counted them. Roughly half of the islands are populated. The population is 120 million, so it is a large country, a big population. The median age is 24 years, so also a very young nation, and the fertility rate is 2.4. So the population is growing still not as rapidly as in the past, but still it is growing, and so the market is expected to become even bigger. One very interesting detail for you: official languages, Tagalog or Filipino, and English. So English is an official language. English proficiency in the Philippines is excellent, very, very widely spoken all over the country. And English is also the language of public administration. So all the certificates and documents and anything you need to file when you want to export to the Philippines, you do not need to translate it to Tagalog. English will be just fine. So that makes it a little bit easier for you. Another interesting fact about the Philippine population is that it's a very outward-oriented population. Filipino overseas workers, so Filipinos that go overseas to work and then send a part of their money home to their families in the Philippines. They contribute 8% of GDP to the Philippines. Basically, every family here in the Philippines has somebody who is working abroad, which also results to the Philippine population to be very interested in the world, in other countries, in other cultures. Austria is very well known in the Philippines. Everybody immediately has, pictures of Austria: mountains, green pastures, nature, culture, music, and so on. People know that. People have a very positive connection to Austria. So it is when marketing Austria, you don't start from zero. And generally people will be very interested. This also results to them having, of course, traveled maybe a little bit, visited their relatives abroad, being interested in different cuisines, so on. So Philippine consumers are very curious also. So this generally is a very interesting market, I think, from that perspective. Let's look a little bit at the economy. The GDP at 497 billion USD is ranked 32nd in the world, 9th in Asia. GDP per capita 4,000 euros is still a lower middle income country, but on the verge of graduating into an upper middle income country, developing very rapidly. 5% is the expected growth rate for 2025. In the coming years, projected to be something around 6%. It was projected to be 6% in 2025. However, in the second half, it was slowed a little bit. But generally, you can say that the Philippines is a rapidly developing, upcoming economy. And a very interesting part here again, it's basically driven by private household spending or private household consumption. In other countries in Southeast Asia, exports are the driving force of the economy. In the Philippines, it's consumption. Filipinos love to consume, and that's what's keeping the economy running. That should be also quite interesting for you, exporting consumer products basically in the end. A little bit, let's have a quick look at meat import statistics. The Philippines is a major importer of meat worldwide. First of all, because it's a large market, and secondly, because local supply in the past 2 years has been heavily impacted by the African swine fever. So there was really a lot of need to source, especially pork from abroad. You can see it here in the statistics with the kilogram. I honestly have no reference of how much this is globally, but it is a major market. So I heard, and interesting is also that the biggest suppliers are Brazil by far, actually, and then US, Australia, Spain, and Canada. So all overseas markets. So all with similar logistical costs and challenges. Import tariffs, pork and beef, 15 to 25 or 5 to 25 respectively. Currently, there is a free trade agreement between the EU and the Philippines in the making, currently in negotiation. Negotiations are going very well. It is expected to be concluded by 2027. However, it's not yet clear what's going to be the outcome on meat. But yeah, I mean, let's see about that. So there's the potential of the tariffs getting less for EU suppliers. Now, from the meat consumption, as said, it's a major market for meat. The Filipino cuisine is a good mix of indigenous Southeast Asian dishes, but of course heavily influenced by Spanish cuisine, Chinese cuisine, and also American, all of which quite heavy on the meats. Yeah, so that's meat is consumed very much. The annual meat consumption of 35 kilo per person is relatively low to, let's say, to Europe. However, with increasing wealth and increasing economic development, this number is expected to go up. And we see here, as I mentioned before, the Philippines is still a lower middle income country, but on the verge of graduating into an upper middle income country. We can see here in the statistic, the difference between lower middle income and upper middle income is huge when it comes to meat consumption. Of course, this will not jump from one year to the other, but generally with larger wealth, with more income, this heavily impacts the meat consumption. And also the agricultural outlook of the OECD lists the Philippines among those countries where global meat consumption will grow the most. So this is a very, very interesting market for now, and even more so for the future. And the Philippines are, I think, quite eager to source meat internationally. So I think this is a very good opportunity for us.
So we will be discussing the accreditation framework and scope. Next, we have the approved commodities covered by the Department Order number 15, series of 2025. And lastly, the accreditation timeline, oversight, and enforcement. So I would like to share with you the legal basis of the accreditation of foreign countries. So currently listed in the slide are the pertinent laws and regulations which outlined the pre-border, border, and post-border measures for imported meat. So we have Republic Act 9296 as amended by Republic Act 10536. That's the Meat Inspection Code of the Philippines and its implementing rules and regulations. We have Republic Act 10611, Food Safety Act of 2013 and its implementing rules and regulations. The Department of Agriculture Administrative Order 16, series of 2006, entitled The Pre-Border Measures for the Export of Meat and Meat Products into the Philippines. And the Department of Agriculture Administrative Order number 26, series of 2005, or the revised rules, regulations, and standards governing the importation of meat and meat products into the Philippines. And of course, we have the legal issuance which officially recognizes Austria as a system-accredited country to export beef and pork into the Philippines. So following the satisfactory results of the de-inspection mission last May 3 to 21, 2025, and the successful deliberation of the accreditation review body last July 11, 2025, this department order was signed last September 19, 2025. It was also published in a newspaper of general circulation, which is the Manila Times, last October 8, 2025, and officially taken effect last October 23, 2025. So as may we all know, the government of Austria transitioned from individual accreditation to system accreditation. So to level off our understanding on the distinction between system and individual accreditation, so presented on the screen is the definition of system and individual accredited country. So this is based from the definition of terms of AO 16 series of 2006. So a system-accredited country is a country whose standards and system of monitoring, surveillance, inspection, and control for animal and public health have been assessed by the National Competent Authority of the Philippines and have been found to meet the requirements to export meat to the Philippines. So all authorized exporting meat establishments by the country are allowed to export meat into the Philippines. So when a foreign country intends to apply for a system accreditation, we typically request for the total number of authorized exporting meat establishments of the country, and from that number of samples for visit during the inspection mission. So as you may have recalled from the total numbers sent by the National Competent Authority last year, I think if I am not mistaken, that was 27 FMEs. We calculated 18 establishments to be visited. So this 18 enterprises represented the total population of the exporting meat establishments of Austria. And reportedly, this 18 satisfactorily complied the audit criteria and regulations set by the Philippine auditors, thereby granting your system accreditation. On the other hand, for individual accredited country, it is the accreditation granted to specific foreign meat establishments that have formally expressed their intent to export meat to the Philippines upon completion of inspection and audit of the NCA and the determination that such establishments are compliant with the requirements to export meat to the Philippines. So for individual accreditation, so only specific meat enterprises or meat establishments who have expressed their intent for export are given the Certificate of Foreign Meat Establishment Accreditation. So Austria's accreditation dates back to 2016 when it was granted individual accreditation for its 6 FMEs. So basically, this is Austria's accreditation in a nutshell. So same commodities, beef and pork, but the difference is that from individual accreditation in 2016, where only 5 or 6 establishments were accredited, starting in October 2025, more establishments are allowed for export. So that's around 27 FMEs and counting. So we have determined some frequently asked questions that our industry partners may have in mind. So the first question is, our establishment was not audited by Philippine auditors in 2025. Are we allowed to export meat to the Philippines? So the answer would be yes. So as Austria is currently recognized as system accredited, all exporting meat establishments that are duly authorized by the Austrian competent authority are allowed to export meat to the Philippines. So again, we would like to emphasize that Austria is system accredited. So as long as the enterprise is registered and authorized by the National Competent Authority for export, then their meat commodities are allowed to enter the Philippine market. So next question, what is the procedure for adding or delisting meat establishments from the roster? So our answer is that the Austrian Competent Authority is required to endorse and maintain an active master list of authorized meat establishments. So this may be made available through an official website or any accessible database where the updated list can be verified. So individual endorsements for each establishment are no longer necessary. So for the second question, we only request the continuous coordination between the competent authorities of the Austria and the Philippines regarding this. So no need for individual correspondence or endorsements per enterprise. We will just be needing access to an active master list of authorized exporting meat establishments for our reference. Okay, so for the approved commodities for export, so I captured this list from the approved department order. So the list was aligned with our reference, which is the ASEAN Harmonized Tariff Nomenclature, or the AHTN code. And it is worth noting that these commodities listed were the ones confirmed by the audited meat establishments and the competent authority during the meetings and conferences conducted by our auditors. So the first commodity approved for export is pork. So it was specified on the list. Okay, so what was specified on the list is the HTN code and the corresponding product description of the commodity. So we have 0203.21, that's meat of swine, frozen, carcasses, and half carcasses. So this particular HTN code is specific for carcasses and half carcasses in frozen condition. Then we have 0203.22, that's meat of swine, frozen, for hams, shoulders, and cuts thereof with bone-in. We also have 0203.29, meat of swine, that is for others. So those primal cuts that were not specified are included in the above code, which is 0.22, that would be classified under 0203.29. Then we have 0206.41, that is for edible offals of swine, frozen, specifically for livers. So those edible offals that were not specified under this HTN code will be classified under 0206.49. So specifically, this is for the other parts aside from livers. Then we have 0209.10, which is for frozen pig fat. So for beef commodities, we have 0202.20, or meat of bovine animals frozen, specifically bone-in commodities. Then we have 0202.30, that's for boneless beef commodities. Then we have for edible offal of bovine animals in chilled condition, we have 0206.10. Then for frozen tongues, we have 0206.21. Then followed by 0206.22, specific for frozen livers. Then for other edible offals not specified above, it would be classified under 0206.29. Then lastly, we have 0504.00, that's for guts, bladders, and stomach of animals. So that is specific for beef and pork. So another frequently asked question, what is the procedure if the industry intends to export chilled pork or beef meat? So as you have noticed from the previous slides, so the meat commodities are in frozen condition. So what if Austria intends to export meat commodities in chilled condition as well? The Austrian National Competent Authority shall formally endorse the following to the NMIS and BAI for evaluation. So specifically, we will be requiring Austrian Competent Authority, the detailed information on the specific packaging, transportation, and handling procedures for chilled meat products, demonstrating compliance with international quality and safety standards, and lastly, a complete list of countries to which the chilled meat commodities are currently exported to provide context on the established global distribution network. So another question, are edible beef offals other than those specified in the department order allowed to be exported? So this includes beef tripe, beef heart, beef cheek. So the answer is yes. So edible beef offals not specifically enumerated in the department order may be exported under AHTN code 0206.10 for chilled and 0206.29 for frozen. So this is still subject to the prevailing animal health status and evaluation by the Bureau of Animal Industry. Same question goes for edible pork offals. So are edible pork offals other than those specified in the department order, like pork jowls, flour fat, pork ear base, and pork skin, allowed to be exported? So the answer would be yes. So edible pork offals not specifically enumerated in the department order may be exported under AHTN code 0206.49.00. So this is specific for meat commodities in frozen condition. Again, this is subject to the prevailing animal health status and evaluation of the Bureau of Animal Industry. So next question, if Austria intends to export meat commodities from animal species not covered by the department order, such as poultry, what is the procedure? So our answer is that should Austria intend to export meat commodities derived from animal species not covered by the existing department order, an official communication must be submitted to the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture requesting the expansion of market access. So this request shall necessitate the conduct of a separate Department of Agriculture inspection mission to evaluate compliance with Philippine requirements. So again, this will be through a communication addressed to the DA Secretary subject for his evaluation and approval. So another question, what is the procedure if the industry intends to export processed meat products? So specifically cooked or thermally processed, canned, cured, smoked, and etc. So the answer is processed meat products fall outside the scope of AO 16 series of 2006 and are not covered by the DA inspection mission. So export of such products would therefore follow separate regulatory requirements from the Department of Health, Food and Drug Administration. So this is due to the delineation of our functions over processed meat to the Department of Health, Food and Drug Administration upon the enactment of the Food Safety Act of 2013. So currently, this is our accreditation timeline based on our historical data and experience with the previous DA inspection missions. So on our side, we are still trying to expedite the process and to streamline each step. So nonetheless, this is likewise contingent on the foreign country on how they respond, negotiate, and comply with the pertinent submissions requested. So usually we start off with the coordination meeting and preparatory stage for the inspection mission. So within this period, we process the travel documents, the logistics, the submission of the accreditation questionnaires, specifically the information on foreign meat establishment, as well as the information on animal and veterinary public health. So this, based on our experience, this would take a minimum of 2 months and a maximum of 4 months. And subsequently, we have the de-inspection mission proper. So this is where we audit the animal health status, the veterinary programs, the food safety implementation and national food control system of the applicant foreign country. And after the conduct of the de-inspection mission, our auditors are tasked to submit a comprehensive report 30 days from their arrival, from the date of their arrival. And this comprehensive report will be endorsed to the accreditation review body for their review and for their assessment of compliance and the evidences provided by the national competent authority as well as the audited foreign meat establishments. So after the deliberation, considering that the recommendation of the auditors were approved by the accreditation review body, the national competent authority of the Philippines through the BAI and the NMIS will proceed to the drafting, approval, and publication of the department order. And once the department order has officially taken effect after 15 days after its publication on a newspaper of general circulation, then the commencement of trade will start. So for our oversight and enforcement, I would like to highlight this particular clause in the Administrative Order 16 Series of 2006, which provides that the national competent authority of all exporting countries, regardless of accreditation status, a system or individual shall submit a copy to the Department of Agriculture of its annual animal health status report, food safety concerns including product recalls, and current list of meat establishments licensed to export, including the list of those that were delisted or suspended. So as mentioned a while ago, we will just be needing an active master list where we can access the list of authorized exporting meat establishments of Austria. And on top of that, we would appreciate receiving an annual animal health status report and a report on food safety concerns, including product recalls. So as you may have noticed in the department order that was issued last 2025, there is a suspension clause indicated on the latter part of the issuance. So these are the specific grounds where an accreditation of a foreign country will be suspended or canceled by the Department of Agriculture. So first, the accredited country violates relevant provisions of Philippine laws and the issuances that pose risk to human, animal, and plant health in the Philippines. So this pertains to our existing Philippine regulations on food safety, the Food Safety Act of 2013, our pertinent guidelines on pre-border measures, AO 16, series of 2006, and our border measures, which is outlined by the AO 26, series of 2005. Second, the accreditation country unlikely since all FMEs that were visited during the inspection mission to Austria complied with the audit criteria and standards of the Philippines. Third, emergency situations in the exporting countries that may pose risk to human and animal health. For example, outbreaks of zoonosis and important notifiable diseases. So if a disease outbreak occurred, such as African swine fever, a temporary restriction shall be imposed. So recently, the Philippines have already issued its procedure for application for regionalization among its DA-accredited countries. So the competent veterinary authority of Austria may submit the application for this bilateral recognition. So next, repeated rejection of consignments upon arrival due to evidence of serious food safety or public health issues in the exporting country. So next, we have repeated occasions of serious misrepresentations or consumer fraud. So this is subject to our existing law on consumer protection, that is the Consumer Act of the Philippines. Next, we have the repeated evidence of a serious failure in the inspection or control system in the exporting country reflected in the imported products. So should there be any reoccurrences of serious failure when it comes to food safety, so this will be flagged by the national competent authority and will be reported to our counterparts in Austria. So next, there are evidence of repeated failures of correctable nature. So a common example of this is labeling errors. So those labels affixed to the cartons or packaging of the imported meat commodities. So there should there be any recurrences of these errors, so this will be reported as well to the Austrian competent authority. And lastly, failure or lack of interest on the part of the national competent authority to comply with commitment. Again, we need to We need the continuous commitment of the country through the national competent authorities in providing us the aforementioned reports in careful observance of the provisions of the administrative order. So this will ensure the smooth facilitation of trade in compliance with the SPS measures. So again, the validity of Austria's accreditation is 3 years, but may be extended subject to compliance with existing importation, food safety, and animal health standards.
I am Dr. Maria Andrea Eileen F. Leogo. I am from the Bureau of Animal Industry, National Veterinary Quarantine Services Division, and I will be discussing to you the phytosanitary import clearance. So right now I am presenting the importation procedure. So we have actually 5 steps here. 4 for meat products, since the 4th one is usually for the live animals. So what we do first is we accredit. That's what my colleague from the NMIS has discussed to you earlier. Next, there will be prior to the issuance of SPSIC, there will be the accreditation of meat importers and live animal importers. So for the case of Austria, just meat importers. So this is done through the NMIS from the National Meat Inspection Services. So usually, so for the issuance of SPSIC or the SPS import clearance, usually it is our local importers who secure this clearance. So meat importers here. Let me go through this first. So what is a phytosanitary import clearance? So this is a document issued prior to importation by the concerned bureau or agency to ensure that the products being imported meet standards to protect human, animal, or plant life or health, ensuring that the agricultural and fishery products are safe for the consumers and to prevent the spread of pests or diseases among animals or plants. So we are mandated to do this by the same admin circular, the AC 6 of 2002. So there are actually 3 bureaus in the Philippines that handle the agricultural products here in that regulates the agricultural products that issues the SPSIC. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources for fishes. For the plants, it's the Bureau of Plant Industry, and for livestock, for animals that are not fishes, also that includes livestock, pets, the exotic animals, the zoo animals, it's the Bureau of Animal Industry. So that it also includes the feeds, feed ingredients, and other feed products, pet foods, and also the veterinary biological products. But for the meat animal products, the meat products, it's the National Veterinary Quarantine Services Division. Another office handles the other commodities. So for our issue 1, so of course for we have to file for an SPS application. You have to be an accredited importer, and then you have to register to the Intercommerce Network Services. So our local importers register to the INS or the DA trade system. After that, they do apply the list of importables, which is reviewed and approved by the Bureau of Animal Industry Technical Staff. Once that is approved, they will be able to fill up the phytosanitary application form, which will be evaluated by 3 people. Actually, there are 3 roles. The SPSIC has is a 3-level evaluation process. So first, it gets reviewed, then it gets endorsed, then finally approved by the BAI assistant director or the director. For the documentary requirement, upon application or upon submission of the SPSIC application, the pro forma invoice of the consignment is attached or uploaded. So this contains the details of the commodity to be imported, such as the volume of the commodity and the establishment source and number. So consequently, these informations are also inputted by the importers through the online portal, the INS, the DA trade system, and the approval or rejection of the applications are based on the correctness of the details inputted. So again, since Austria is a system accredited country, all SMEs can export to the Philippines as long as they are approved and validated by the Austrian competent authorities. Our port officer shall validate this upon arrival at the first border or the border of entry, whether the approved SPS has the correct and the same details in the veterinary health certificate of the consignment. So if a disease, like my colleague from NMIS said, if a disease outbreak occurred such as ASF, a temporary restriction shall be imposed. So again, recently, the Philippines have already issued its procedure for application for regionalization among its DA accredited countries. So yes, so if ever hopefully not, but if ever ASF Austria gets an ASF outbreak, you may submit, the National Competent Authority may submit a request for the bilateral recognition of the regionalization if that time comes. So the validity period of the SPSIC is 90 days. So and that there is a must ship out date. You will be able to see a must ship out date on the SPSIC, and that shall be the SPSIC shall be valid until that ship out date. So it's usually 90. It is 90 days as per the EC6 2022. So unused SPSIC shall be considered automatically expired or cancelled after the must ship out date. The consignment or product shall be loaded at the port of embarkation at the country of origin on or before the last day of the must ship out date. So in no case shall the date of loading at the port of embarkation at the country of origin be earlier than the date of issuance of the SPSIC. Otherwise, the shipment is subject to confiscation procedures.
We've this afternoon we've gone through the logical steps. First, we talked about the accreditation of the exporting country, and then we moved on to the import permit system required by the government, and now we go into the end stage where we talk about the actual importation of the goods. Just to segue from what Dr. Andrea was discussing earlier, I'd like to stress to our exporters in Austria that an import permit is a necessary document prior to departure of the goods from Europe, right? And from my experience, the government is very strict on this policy, and any violation, unfortunately, there is no negotiation, right? Therefore, we always suggest that prior to arranging the loading of the container at the cold storage, that you always request your buyer for a copy of the SPIS so that you could check the details written on the permit and verify its accuracy with respect to the date of issuance, with respect to the commodity description, with respect to the establishment number shown on the SPIS, the port of origin, the port of delivery, basically everything that is written on there. Now, also I'd like to add, in the case of SPIS, a pro forma invoice is required for the importer to apply for an SPS. So usually in the course of business, once a deal is made, the exporter will issue a pro forma invoice to the buyer, and that document is what the buyer will then use to apply for an import permit. Now, we encourage that the exporters try to be as consistent as possible with respect to the details on the pro forma invoice, meaning that the commodity description, for example, on the pro forma invoice must be consistent with the commodity description on the box label. And likewise, it must be consistent with the commodity description on the health certificate that is issued by the government, right? So, assuming that you have received already the SPS and everything, all the details check out, and there is no glaring error on the document, then you may proceed to arrange loading of the container and shipment to the Philippines. As Dr. Andre already said, the permit is valid for 90 days. So all you must do is ship the goods within the 90-day period, right? Usually that is the meaning of that is that the bill of lading, the practical meaning of that is that the bill of lading must be dated within the validity period of the import permit. Now, there will be instances where, due to unforeseen events, you might have delays in departure. A container has already been loaded on the vessel, and the vessel departure has been delayed for whatever reason, and it might actually, or if you are going to load very close to the expiry date of the permit, I would always suggest that you work with your importer to reapply for a new permit, right? And also be cognizant that we have many holidays in the Philippines, so always give yourself ample time, right, to apply for a new permit. Although from experience, it has taken me as little as 48 hours to secure an import permit. Sometimes due to many reasons, like people could be out of the office, or there could be holidays, or the authorizing officers in the Department of Agriculture could be away on seminars. Sometimes it may take up to 2 weeks to get an SPS. Therefore, my recommendation would be, if your permit is about to expire within 2 weeks, it's already 2 weeks within the 2 weeks of expiry date, then I would always suggest that you request your buyer to apply for a new permit, right? So that you for whatever reason, you always have yourself covered, and you will not be in a situation whereby, unfortunately, a shipment departs with an expired permit. Okay. Now, let's now get into the process of importation itself. Listed on your screen is a list of government agencies that one would normally have to go through or deal with to import a container of meat in the Philippines. Now, as you can see, there are several offices there, but basically there are only two government agencies that you deal with: the Bureau of Customs and the Department of Agriculture. The second to the last one is, you might be wondering why that is included on there, the ASEAN, Australia-New Zealand Free Trade Area. I decided to put that on there because at some point in time, if EU and the Philippines is able to negotiate an FTA, then there would be corresponding documents that would be necessary for the importer to avail of a duty-free import of goods, right? Otherwise, the other offices that you see there are basically with the Bureau of Customs and or the Department of Agriculture. So once the shipment is about to arrive, the importer, through his or her customs broker, usually will file an import entry. Now, an import entry is the equivalent of the export declaration, I imagine, that is also filed by the exporter from the other side, right? So there are basically two portals that the importer must use to process an import shipment. One is called the Intercommerce, right? And the second one is the Bureau of Customs portal, right? So the first stop is the Intercommerce portal, which, by the way, is also the same portal that importers use to apply for their SPS. Right? Through the Intercommerce portal, the copies of the shipping documents are uploaded, and the broker will then be able to download two documents that you can see on your screen. One is the temporary assessment notice and the single administrative document. Temporary assessment notice is basically the initial assessment of the duties and taxes that are due on the consignment, right? It's a calculation based on the CIF value, the exchange rate of the week, which is basically, if you sell in US dollar, then that would be the US dollar Philippine peso exchange rate for the week during which your shipment arrives, and then based on the duty rate that's applicable to the commodity being imported. So in the case of beef, I believe it will be 10% for generally 10%. And then for pork, it will be dependent on the quota system. In quota, usually 15%, out quota is 25%. Offals, which are not subject to quota, will then be around 10%, I believe, except fat, which would be lower, right, than I think 5%, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the single administrative document is simply the import entry declaration. It's a new term, but that's basically the import entry declaration, which gives you, in a nutshell, the assessed value and the amount of duties that the government deems appropriate for the shipment in question. Now, simultaneously, the customs broker will have to, again through Intercommerce, do an RFI, which is basically a request for inspection. This is for the Department of Agriculture, right? Each port of entry in the Philippines has a veterinary officer assigned with the Bureau of Animal Industry, right? In the Philippines, we are subject to two inspections. One at the port of entry, and secondly at the cold storage. This is because we are unable to do an adequate inspection at the port. The port inspection is basically a paper check. When they will simply open the container, and since there is no facility to unload the cartons and do a thorough check, basically they will only check what appears nearest the door, and the job of the inspector is to see if there are any traces of, for example, thawing during transit. They will look for traces of blood, for example, maybe frozen blood, or even wet blood on the floor, or blood-stained cartons. And they will check the box label, right? They will check the box label against the import permit. Okay. Now, again, I would like to caution our exporters in Austria to be very careful with what they load in the container, because mistakes have happened in the past whereby boxes of some other product were, by mistake loaded into the container. Unfortunately, this puts the entire container into question, and could lead to confiscation of the entire load, right? We importers have been in discussion with the government, requesting if it's possible to just have the offending boxes removed from the container at the second border, but But so far, the position of the government has mostly been to hold the entire container. Unfortunately, only for a few boxes that were loaded by mistake. Right now, the other thing that the broker has to do is also to book the GPS or the e-track. Each container that leaves the port has to be tagged with a GPS, right? You would recall I mentioned that we have 2 inspections in the Philippines. So the second inspection takes place at the cold storage, right? And we are only allowed to bring imported meat to cold storages that are officially registered with the Department of Agriculture, with the National Meat Inspection Commission, right? So each container is going to be, when the broker files a request for inspection, they will simultaneously put the name and the address of the cold storage to which the container will be delivered, right? This is so that the inspectors know where to anticipate the container. And if it, for whatever reason, it doesn't show up in that particular cold storage, then they will go looking for it, right? So a container cannot be diverted to any other location without prior approval of the Department of Agriculture. So the next portal that the importer has to work with, or the broker of the importer has to work with, is the BOC portal. Now, this is where all the shipping documents are uploaded, including the 2 documents that they were received initially from the Intercommerce, right? Which is the temporary assessment notice and the single administrative document. Now, apart from those 2, usually the rest are all pretty standard shipping documents. You have your bill of lading, your invoice, your packing list, your health certificate, and your SPS, right? You will also have to upload the approved RFI, or request for inspection, and the e-track booking. So all of these are essential for you to process and move your shipment along, right? Now, there are other documents aside from these, depending on the type of commodity being imported. Now, the MAB certificate is the quota, basically, right? In the case of pork and chicken is subject to quota. That basically allows the importer, or entitles the importer, to import meat at a lower rate of duty. So a quota holder, for example, can pay only 15% duty for pork, whereas a non-quota holder will have to pay 25%. In the case of chicken, it is all one duty rate, whether it's in quota or out quota. The difference being that if you do not have a quota, then you may be subject to a surcharge. All right, that is an additional duty levied on top of the already 40% duty that importers have to pay for poultry. But anyways, I won't go into chicken since the scope of our discussion is only beef and pork. For beef, there is no such MAB certificate, right? It is basically a 10% duty across all products. Now, the government or the Bureau of Customs may, at its discretion, require the importer to also present the proof of payment, the remittance to the supplier overseas, and the sales contract. Right? This is to guard against technical smuggling or undervaluation of the goods. Right? And then the last one is the free trade. I mentioned earlier, in case the EU eventually at some point in the future is able to finalize a free trade agreement with the Philippines or with ASEAN, then usually there is an additional document that is required from the exporter side that will entitle the importer to zero rate of duty, right? It will be called something else, I would imagine, for EU exports. So once all these documents are uploaded into the Bureau of Customs portal, right, the documents will be reviewed. First, it will be reviewed by an examiner, right? So he will take a look at the invoice, and the commodity, and the Bureau of Customs basically has a list of values for various import commodities, right? And they will compare, right? The Philippines, of course, just like any other country, has a sovereign right to determine whether it feels the value is a fair value, or it believes that the value is a bit low, and would like to ask the importer to justify why their declaration is lower, right? The government has many sources of information at its disposal, and this is usually it leads to a discussion between the importer and the examiner as to the accuracy of the valuation, right? After the examiner reviews the documents, it goes to yet another person, right? Okay, it goes to the appraiser, right? Sometimes the examiner agrees, but the appraiser does not agree. So it becomes a discussion again between the importer and the appraiser as to, if they can reach an agreement as to the value of the goods. Now, I would tell you that 9 out of 10 times the government will win, because the importer is paying electricity and other port charges, which is quite significant, on a daily basis. So he has no interest to prolong the discussion, right? So if the difference is not significant, then 9 out of 10 times as an importer, you probably just pay what the government wants you to pay, right? Okay. So as far as once assuming that the importer and the customs has reached an agreement as to the value, then duties are actually paid, right? And the payment of duties is essentially directly between the bank and the Bureau of Customs, right? So it's a B2B transaction, where the money is automatically debited from the importer's bank account and credited to the Bureau of Customs. Now, some exporters or have asked whether it's possible to do this prior to arrival of the vessel, right? Technically, yes. Technically, yes. You could have your duties assessed and duties paid prior to arrival of the container, but these days I don't think anyone will willingly want to do that, because a lot of nearly all, I would say, of the import shipments are delayed. There are no direct sailings into the Philippines. Every single container, it doesn't matter from which origin, will have to pass through one of the transshipment ports in Asia, whether it be Singapore, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. It will just have to pass through one transshipment port. And for whatever reason, which I myself don't fully understand as of today, containers are being held at the transshipment port by the carriers, and then brought to Manila, and So sometimes we have surges of import arrivals. The market is sometimes short of stock, and then all of a sudden, after one or two vessels arrive, all of a sudden you have too much inventory in the Philippines, right? Once the duties are paid, the broker will then work with the carrier to secure a delivery order, right? So this may involve surrendering the original bills of lading to the local office of the carrier, and at the same time, the broker also has to settle all the bills at the port. In our case, there will always be plug-in charges, so there will be electricity costs, there will be storage charges at the port, right? And without the delivery order issued by the carrier, then it will not be possible to bring any container out of the port, right? So this is to make sure that all importers settle their destination charges, right? So, for example, you have lift-on, lift-off fees. Here in the port of Manila, all of these need to be settled, and the carriers also charge, for example, cleaning fees, or sometimes in the case of, especially during COVID times, when shipments were very irregular, they would impose a surcharge, for example, for container imbalance, right? So all these have to be settled with the carrier before a delivery order is issued, right? Then the broker will then book again through the BOC terminal tabs, basically terminal booking appointment system, which is basically a gate pass, right? All it does is it gives your truck entry into the port area. It allows them a time for them to enter the port area, and more importantly, the scheduling of the crane, because the containers are loaded onto a flatbed, so you will need the services of a crane to be able to load your container, frozen container, onto a flatbed, right? From there, once it's been loaded onto a flatbed, right, it still has to go through several stages, as you can see. Bear in mind that at this point, duties have already been paid on the container, right? But before it finally gets released, it still has to go through X-ray, the spot check, and the spot check is conducted by representatives from the various agencies, as you can see. BAI is the Department of Agriculture, CIIS is BOC, and then all the rest at the bottom, these are all customs people from various offices, right? And usually the spot check is also done in the presence of the customs broker, right? So if everyone is in agreement that there seems to be nothing irregular with the shipment, then everyone signs off, and the container can then be brought out of the port for it to be tagged, right? It will now be tagged with a GPS, right? And from there, delivered to the cold storage, which the broker has already nominated when they applied for the inspection, right? Now, upon arrival at the cold storage, the nominated cold storage, the importer cannot just open the container. First of all, the GPS must be deactivated by the government. We cannot touch the GPS, right? Once we mess around with the GPS, we could be in serious trouble of having that container confiscated. Likewise, once after the initial port inspection, the container is likewise sealed by the BAI inspector at the port. That seal can only be broken by an NMIS inspector and his counterpart NMIS inspector at the cold storage. Now, the NMIS inspector is the one who actually witnesses the unloading of the goods and does a more thorough inspection of the boxed meat, right? So, NMIS inspection, depending on the cold storage, the inspection also has to be coordinated properly because some facilities do not have a permanent NMIS inspector on site. So 2 or 3 cold storages, for example, may share a pool of inspectors, right? So the arrival of the goods has to be coordinated and timed properly. What makes this difficult is because we have truck bans in the Philippines. So these large trucks cannot be on the road during peak hours, during rush hours. So invariably, the trucks are only delivered at night. So unless an NMIS inspector is willing to receive the load at night, more often than not, the inspection will actually be done the following day. The NMIS inspectors are quite good at this. A lot of them are very accommodating, so that even if the goods, for example, arrive at the cold storage on a Friday night, they will agree to have the inspection the following day on a Saturday, which is normally a non-working day for government officials. Container has been unloaded, it's been inspected, the NMIS inspector has signed off on the goods, everything is fine. Then the final stage is the return of the empty container to the yard of the carrier. Now, either the trucker or the customs broker will have to coordinate with the carrier because the carrier may have several container depots, right? Not all of them are within the city, within Metro Manila itself. Some of them could be in the neighboring provinces, right? So it's important to know where to deliver where to return the empty container. And I understand that the trucker is given a time slot within which to return the van. So the trucker's job is to be there at the appointed time to be able to return the container. Because I imagine, just like at the port, there will be a crane to offload the empty box into the container yard, right? Otherwise, non-return would lead to the demurrage and or detention charges levied by the carrier. Okay. Just a simple note that basically all import shipments go through the same process. It doesn't matter whether what origin. The only difference is that if there is a duty-free agreement, then obviously no duties and taxes are waived, but the same checks are still carried out on the shipment, meaning the same veterinary and sanitary inspection by the BAI inspector of the port and the NMIS inspector of the cold storage. The container still has to go through X-ray. There's still the request for inspection. So all of that still has to be done by the broker. The only difference really is that there are no duties paid. All right, but based on experience, that hasn't stopped the government from questioning the load. So sometimes an overzealous customs inspector might still question the load, even if it's duty free. Right.